have now.
Okay, we're here for episode 7, I believe it is.
7.
You don't watch them, so I'm pretty sure this is episode 7. We're nearing the end of Bite Down Hard.
We have 3 tracks left out of 10, I guess, or 10 titles, I guess.
Yeah. Unlike a lot of other artists, for this particular album, I know it's not common, but you really recorded the songs that went on the album. Instead of recording 40 and picking out 10, you pretty well had the 10.
Yeah, I just sort of, not for lack of stuff to sort of indulge in, but I just sort of picked 10 and just worked at those 10. I'm sure I was sort of indulging at home too, sort of writing and stuff like that. We were doing other stuff in the studio too. Of course, you had your famous friend Les. We were doing lots of work at the time. Les was a lad. Are we allowed to talk about him briefly or stuff like that?
Yeah, we briefly touched on him an episode or two ago, and I said we would probably have a whole show devoted to that because it was such a crazy, fun, ridiculous project.
So Les was an interesting cat. Les came from Alberta. He was he worked for the government, I guess, or he came here to work for the government. I guess for a lot of people, he might be sort of he was a bit of a loner, I would suspect. Would that be right? In I don't think he had a lot of friends. At least he had a lot of friends here, or he had made a lot of friends. I don't know how long he'd been in Ottawa for and stuff like that. Came across sort of as a super nice guy, but I would say sort of a lonesome type of cat. But interestingly, I admired him very much. So, like musicians, somebody that wants to communicate. So I don't remember Les ever being able. So Les came to you. He had a pile of songs, but he didn't write songs per se. Like he didn't. I don't remember him playing a guitar or anything like that. He had
very rudimentary. If you remember, he would come into the studio with a pile of his poems, and they were old-timey country-ish kind of poems, and he would either have us record, come up with music for his poems and melodies for his poems, or he would engage some Nashville studio cats. They were really good. There was a number of them. You send down your poetry, and they would do the whole country backup for it, even including background vocals, send it back to you so you could then take it to a project studio and finish your vocals on it. So there was a mix of that kind of music with Les.
Yeah, I find it incredibly intriguing and interesting just on a sort of human level. Les very much had a ton of poems and he very much wanted to get his music out, even though he was very sort of limited in his technical abilities to sort of create the music. He had all the lyrics. He had
none.
Pardon me?
He had none. He couldn't. He would plunk notes out on a guitar.
Yeah.
And I said to you.
Yeah, but he had lyrics. Like he had just a pile of lyrics, but he had a vision in his head, a very strong vision of what he wanted. And
I know what you're getting at now.
What was it?
It did. Okay, but Les is a whole other episode, and we can indulge ourselves then.
Okay, yeah.
People are here to hear what your.
I guess this is a long way of talking. Yeah.
Right.
So what?
We were talking about Bite Down Hard and the songs that you had prepared for. Another question I had is, it's always about pacing on an album, and I get very used to certain albums pacing. Song orders. I'm trying to think if you had the song orders in mind too, or we just finished them, and then decided.
I think it was a bit more of that. Yeah, I don't think, in retrospect, I'm listening to this album 30 years later. In retrospect, there's a lot of stuff that I'm critical of myself for at the time. I still don't think an album by me is a good thing. I think it's much too long, it's much too Byron and stuff like that. But if I were to pick 3 or 4 songs out of the group, I think they would have been a good addition to a band's album with maybe like another songwriter or stuff like that. I think it's too much me. It's hard for me to talk about the pacing of this album because there's just sort of this patina of the pacing would be a lot better if there were other types of vocals on it, stuff like that. But these two songs in particular are that we're about to talk about are interesting. Is that they're slower. Serendipity and Lieb are slower. They're more classical songs in structure. I mean, they're not going out of. They're sort of verse, like a bridge. You sort of hit a chorus and stuff like that. Yeah. So if the question is about how we put these songs in order and stuff like that, yeah, I don't think there was any sort of forethought. I don't think there was any forethought at all. Hard to think, other than the last song that we're going to talk about, I think was always going to be sort of at the back half of the album. Does that make sense to you, or am I sort of going?
Absolutely. These three songs are landmarks in certain ways. Now, again, it's you and I. This album means so much to us, and the songs mean so much to us. These three songs are really significant. One of them, I think, might be one of the most beautiful songs ever written, just as a fan. One is my favorite for obvious reasons, just because it was the most involved, indulgent song that we allowed ourselves in the studio. And the other one, I never liked my guitar solos, but you and I together worked out this solo that I'm very proud of.
That was a fun moment. Yeah. I remember doing it. I remember sitting in front of you while you did the guitar solo and stuff like that.
And me trying to interpret your melodic phrases, but again, I always say when people ask me my solos, I go, I feel like Nigel Tufnell's opposite, that I'm so horrible. I play the same little boxes everywhere, and I don't typically pick the song's melody as the basis for the solo. I'm just playing little, calisthenic things that I worked out on the guitar. In this particular instance and we'll hear it today, is a solo that follows the melodic line of the song. And that's why I guess I'm happy with it, because I go, well, I don't usually do that.
Yeah, I think it works well. And actually, I've sort of been scruffing with a couple of my old schoolmates playing songs, one of my schoolmates has written a lot of the songs, so I get to play bass, and it's fun to do stuff that's not my own. So I really enjoy it, sort of musically. I get to play bass, but he's sort of not a technically great guitar player. But we've been having solo sections, and he didn't really know how to play guitar. Or he does, but what we ended up doing is just playing the melody of the verses on his guitar. And boy, it's such a simple trope, but it really works out good. It really works out nice.
And I always want, like, for myself, because I told you, we all come from somewhere. We don't, learn in a vacuum. And, besides, like Byron, the Beatles' huge influence in me was also Alice Cooper. And it was years into my mediocre playing that I listened to Glenn Buxton and the Alice Cooper records. And I went, oh my God, that's where I learned how to play solos. And he's just playing the pentatonic boxes up and down, but he's good. He's doing some interesting stuff, but you sort of hear your ancestors. You go, God, that's my father of guitar. I'm not so excited about my playing.
Well, it's interesting. It was probably one of your more favorite things. Is probably because you played it outside of your normal safe box, and I sort of got you outside of that, and that's why you probably stands out for you. The fact.
Yeah,
that
and it's not that it's an intricate line. It's just. It's funny, but the most low-hanging fruit, follow the melody, is something I've never done, and so it was so different to do it. Anyways, that's the second song.
Right, yeah, we're not even talking about it. Yeah.
So on my three sort of descriptions, this first one we're going to listen to, Serendipity, I think might be one of the most beautiful songs ever written. Judge for yourself. So much so that in later years, John Dewar, another friend of ours, studio wizard, felt the need to redo it, to give it some proper space. But it also is an example for me where there's a magic that's captured at a certain time. Not that the secondary one wasn't just as good. There's something about that first one, though.
Always the demo.
Yeah, because in essence, our original album was a demo album because that's what the limitations gave you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think I've gravitated now. Now, when I record, I'm always demoing my final product at the same time. I don't like to practice. I like to get that first take or second take without thinking about it. There's a certain spirit to it always. Yeah.
When you talk to people that put out as much stuff as you, that as they get older, it seems to be the same understanding that laboring over stuff and is not the way to get music.
Yeah, you can perfect your part, but I think the sort of fire, that underlying fire, comes out of it. Yeah, certainly that's the thing. That's sort of the trade-off in recording music. So I can sort of go in and do the demo version, take most of it, and sort of fix my mistakes or whatever. But yeah, I don't like to be labor over anything anymore at all. I don't practice nothing. I just sort of play it.
That's... I think we've spoke of this before, but probably why, huge recording artists, the typical formula is, write some songs when you're on tour, work them out for a year on tour. So you're not laboring over it. You're having fun in front of people, realizing what they like, real time. So at the end of a year, you've got an album of songs that sound fucking good.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You don't have that luxury, so you're going, I'm trying to keep it fresh, but I don't get to play it night after night after night. I don't think you could, personally.
No, I don't think I could either. But if I was, I could definitely see it. And I understand why bands the song, it must be very difficult for the bands, especially when they have a recorded version and they're going out on tour and stuff like that. Of course, large majority of the fans want to hear the version that they hear on the album and stuff like that. But I'm sure once they start playing the same song again and again, in their head they must start hearing other things, and they must wish they could sort of develop the song into other areas, because as you just keep sort of going through it in your head, to sort of stay on the same train track must be very difficult, be very incredibly frustrating for...
Well, once again, this is Serendipity is a song you wouldn't associate with a normal rock band, with brushes and all kinds of, it's an atmospheric piece.
Yeah, this song coming up, it was actually, and it's so not my sort of shtick. It was so the song is written in threes. I don't know whether it's 6/8 or 3/4. I don't know, but I wrote it on a piano. Actually, I wrote it on my Casio keyboard. I specifically wanted a keyboard type of song, and it was for somebody's wedding. I think somebody had asked me to do it, so that's why the vocals are or the lyrics are so positive, and I don't really put a shiv in it. But yeah, you should play it. I haven't heard it in a million years. Go.
Serendipity.
Go.
Wasted time. I've been so out of my mind. I've had no home, baby. Then I found you. She gives me such a thrill, someone to call my own. The things you do to me, someone who lets me be me. Pull the trigger. This is the beginning. Start it up, let's hit the road. The two of us were riding to This is my home, and I'm coming home for good. Ooh, she gives me such a thrill. Someone to lean on me. The things she do to me. Someone to live till I cry. This is love. This is the beginning. We started up. Let's hit the road. The two of us will ride into the sun. The soul is the river. She's home to settle down, raise the kids down on the farm. She gives me such a thrill. Someone to call my own. Oh, the things you do to me. Someone who lets me be. Oh, she gives me such a thrill. Someone to lean on me. Oh, the things you do to me. Someone to live till I come. Oh, she gives me such a thrill. Someone to call my own. Lean on me. The things you do to me. Someone who lets me. Someone knows. She gives me such a thrill. Someone to lean on me. The things you do to me. Someone to she gives me such a
Wow. I enjoyed listening to that. I think one of the things I enjoyed the most about listening to it was the fact that there's another person singing backgrounds with me, and just, at least in the smallest way, just gave a bit more. But I haven't heard it in a long time. It sounded wonderful for what we did. I think it sounds great. What are your sort of...
I made a couple of notes as it went along just because I don't want to forget stuff. Not that there was a lot to it.
Who's the lad that sang with me on this?
When
and
you
where
said
is he now?
you liked the way the vocals sat, I think because there was an extra voice. I think it was one time in the album we had an extra person singing properly.
What a difference. It's so nice to hear.
A lot of people know this guy. He's on HGTV. He is the star of Masters of Flip, Dave Wilson. He's bald now, but he had long blonde hair back then. And he was in my studio doing a bunch of his heavy metal songs. Go figure. And just was a great friend. Dave is one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And he loved Byron's music, so he took part. And that song, you can hear him in the backgrounds.
Yeah, it sounded... that's one of my joys about hearing that song, just hearing the vocals, stuff like that. What else sort of...
Well, because it's not your typical Byronic composition, because you said it was for someone's wedding, so you held off on a lot of the dismal images. But there was one, I loved it, at the end of that chorus.
Right,
pull the trigger.
Yeah, well...
I'm guessing that's get married already.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe a minor shiv. But lyrically, I listened to some of those lyrics, and "Ooh, she gives me such a thrill" is a wonderful lyric. I think
Someone to count on, you know.
Yeah, someone to count on me. Yeah, someone to love. But the line "she gives me such a thrill," I think that line sort of reminds me of sort of a Cole Porter line, and I don't know what the song is, but there's sort of a preempt to the song proper that Cole Porter did, and such a fabulous face, and you give me such a thrill. It's sort of I can hear that sort of probably where I grabbed it from. But yeah, lyrically it sounds wonderful. But I gotta say, what really stood out for me was that middle section, the instrumental section, with the swirling
cascading arpeggios.
arpeggios and then your guitar solo. Again, like I listened to the Hitler thing and it was always that little middle section. We seem to work so hard on your guitar parts or those sections.
Tiny little bits.
Yeah, but they just come across to me just so wonderful. This thing is wonderful. So I don't know whether you want to explain it, but sort of that middle eight, that cascading strings, I don't even know what to call it. It reminds me sort of Walt Disney or whatever like that.
It's Wizard of Oz.
But sure. I came across that serendipity. It was a serendipitous moment while working on Serendipity that I came across that cascading. So where did that part come from? It came. I remember your sampler. Somehow your sampler started.
Well, what I remember too is we were working on this. Thinking that it's supposed to be like the Wizard of Oz, the house going and all, and it very much sounds like that. And it's the faster arpeggios against the slower like harp.
Yeah.
And what it was is that fast, whatever that fast weird sound is, the fast arpeggio, we had written that, and it got misplaced in the sequence. You know, you sort of copy and paste some master tracks pros. It gets misplaced slightly, so the way its start time is just behind off, and it ended up being this awesome little thing. It's almost like creating an effect. Say you did like a MIDI delay or something, right?
It's wonderful.
It works so well because it's got to come back in at the end.
I'm surprised I didn't throw more of it on throughout the whole album just because it was so friggin' cool.
But it's neat because not just as a neat oral effect, it works with the song because it takes you to that place, you know.
Yeah, and that is what is so freaking exciting about when you're recording, when you hit those moments. And I mean, I'm still sort of slack-jawed at that moment where the song is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I can really, so I can almost transport myself and say, well, just imagine just being in a big orchestral hall and hearing a full-blown orchestra sort of chink out on that stuff, chime out on that stuff.
If I were to think of it like an analogy of a band that we appreciate, it was, for that album, for me, it was kind of your "Oh Darling" moment where you really worked in that vocal. Because when you hear I also have a note here saying the Vox out, your scats on the end there are crazy good. It's hard to hear them and wish they're
I wish on a lot of the other stuff I didn't, my vocals were more up and everything wasn't double tracked all the time. For sure I can hear that. Again, too much Byron, but yeah, it was fun to hear. It was such a wonderful song. So doing that, and then so move maybe 5 years ahead or 6 years ahead, or 5 years ahead, and I'm in another studio, like a big studio proper that John Dewar had when I was working on my Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey. And I don't know who, and I know John who I was working with, loved that song. And to me, that just sort of harkens out to a sort of a full-blown sort of string section. I love, there's nothing that gives me greater joy than listening to something I had put together and hearing a real string section sort of play and stuff like that. Like that just puts me over the moon. I don't know who charted, so 5 or 6 years later, John, owning a big studio, would always have... he would sometimes be recording string sections from the NAC, or some quartets would come in and he would record and stuff like that.
Remember Iwan Haria?
Right, so there's one guy that he did CDs, he was a violin player, he came from the middle of Europe, a wonderful gentleman who did his own CDs and stuff like that. So he would bring his own string section. So John was always trying to like finish off these sessions. And if we had the string players and all the mics were set up, John would have 10 minutes left, and John would always use that 10 minutes I was always writing string. I had done a couple of Christmas songs, I remember, where I had actually charred out the thing for the strings and stuff like that, which was terrifying, but it was really fun. I don't know who... John wanted to redo this because he knew he's going to have some string sections, and he wanted to redo this song. John also had a beautiful big grand piano in the room and stuff like that. I don't know who he got to chart it. I don't think I charted it, but he got...
Well, I know part of that story. he came to me knowing that I had the little floppy disks of all your sequences.
Right.
Which, who knows where those are now. But we took the floppy disk and had to find a floppy drive to take the sequence charts out of it, like the MIDI charts.
Oh, I see.
And I didn't really work on the production at all, so I think I came in and did I do the guitar again?
I think so. I can't remember.
No, I don't think I was good enough.
No, I think you
I
did it.
don't think I was good enough. But I remember him trying to extract the MIDI sequences from the song. And you know, this is right as people were kids. We used to use floppy disks to store stuff, and they were like, what were they? 3.5 or 5 inch. These ridiculous floppy disks would hold like 100K of. I don't even forget the storage. It was ridiculous. 256K or something. All you hold were like documents, you know, like MIDI documents. But that's what he tried to extract. And anyways, we will, and I don't have it with me right now, but we will play Serendipity Redo. And even if I find it in the meantime, I'll plop it in right here.
This is the beginning. I've wasted time. I've been so out of my mind. I've had no home. Darling, when I found you, ooh, she gives me such a thrill. Someone to call my own. Ooh, the things she do to me. Someone who lets me be me. Pull the trigger. This is the beginning. We're starting up. Let's hit the road. The two of us ride into the sun. She's low. Let's saddle up. Raise the kids down on the farm. Let's take it up to the country. Let's find a road that never ends. She is my home, and I'm coming home. She gives me such a thrill. Someone to lean on me. Ooh, the things she did to me. Someone to live till I die. This is love. This is the beginning. We're starting up. Let's hit the road. The two of us riding to the sun. She's slow. Let's saddle up. Raise the kids down on the farm. Ooh, she gives me such a thrill. Ooh, the things she do to me. Ooh, she gives me such a thrill.
I didn't. So John, while I was working on my next album, which was called "The Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey," John would get in these string sections, and next thing I knew, I walked into the studio one day, and there was a full string section that he had recorded of Serendipity, and he had some drummer come in and play, and I think there was a bit of piano on it already, and. To hear it in his studio was, certainly to hear a live string section and really hear the chords and all that stuff. It blows me away. I mean, I passed out. I just listening to it. It was just crazy business for me. So I've always. Knew from the start when I was doing songs and stuff like that no matter even if I put 100 instruments on and stuff like that, I could always go back and do an acoustic guitar version and really just get to the elements of a song, and it always sounded wonderful to me to listen to any song I've sort of ever written, and to hear sort of those basic parts of the song. The other day, so it's Christmas, we're 3 days after Christmas right now. So I was at somebody's house on Christmas Eve, and they had on in the background Christmas music. It was piano only, but it was piano playing Christmas songs and stuff like that. So the big song, I guess, this year was the Mariah Carey song and stuff like that, which you heard a million times and stuff like that.
All I Want for Christmas?
Yeah, All I Want for Christmas, stuff like that, which is a wonderful Christmas song. But I'm at the house on the 24th, and all of a sudden the little piano version of that song comes out. And it sounds like the guy that was playing the song just was playing like the melody with one finger and just playing these little three-chord little vamps off it and stuff like that. I was mesmerized by it because really it stripped the song away and it just went to the elements of this beautiful little chord change and stuff like that. There's no lyrics, but you can almost like sing along to the. It was almost like like listening to it. That's what somebody had to wake me out of my stammer because I was just so hooked into listening to this gorgeous melody come out. So I remember being in the studio 5 years later with this. I was working in the studio one morning. Nobody was around. John had recorded all the strings and stuff like that. The grand piano was sitting out there, and it was all mic'd up. Everything was like, it was good to go. And I hadn't played the song in about 5 or 6 years. And I remember going in and pressing play and running in with the piano and just playing the melody off the grand piano. And I was there for about an hour just playing the melody a million times. Like, it just affected me. It was so beautiful. And just to hear things stripped down and stuff like that, that's what I... After that experience on the 24th, I actually went home on Christmas Eve, and because I've been listening to a lot of these songs for the first time in 30 years, a lot of it sounds like too much Byron. I actually went back and played on my acoustic guitar Christmas Eve, This Is Not Emily, and there was another song, and just to sort of get at the basic sort of, and the songs really almost sounded more beautiful, just hearing just sort of me sort of humming along and just sort of playing like the acoustic guitar. When you really strip these songs down, they're gorgeous, and I that's the big thing I get out of listening to this album. I don't take anything away from my songs or my melodies or my lyrics. I think the production, and we were learning, and there's just a lot there. But hearing a song like Serendipity now there are definitely parts I'm listening to that just sound wonderful. It's a beautiful melody. Like it's kind of a chordy thing, but I agree with you.
That's it. I don't want to belabor the point. I think it was one of the most beautiful songs ever written. I didn't write it, but I would expect to read an article where an artist would say, it just kind of came out of me. All the greatest songs, from all the artists that we love, all of us, when you hear what their greatest works, they say, like Sting, with every breath, it's 5 minutes. Once it starts going, it just kind of, and he said, I'm just a medium for it, because it just spills out of you. I don't know if that was the case for this, if it was...
Well, so it's an out-of-the-box thing. I only wrote it because at the time I think I was asked to do it for somebody's wedding. So I would normally not write that type of song. But so again, it's just like we were talking about your guitar solo. So it's actually somebody taking you outside of your box. And so I would not have come up with that.
Really only lyrically, not stylistically. People love your style.
Don't know.
So I don't think that's totally an un-Byronic song. I just think lyrically it's pretty tame in a sense.
It is. It is. It's not. Yeah. So it sort of puts me outside of my box, stuff like that. I agree. I've heard Elton John say about writing those type of songs. You could do those songs all day, sort of writing nice little melodies and sort of those slow things, and just find nice little chord changes and stuff like that. I was actually watching an interview because of Elton John and the way he wrote. And so he sort of came from sort of a classical background, and he was showing sort of his Mozart chords and his Brahms chords, and then it's sort of how he fit them into his Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and all that stuff. And as soon as he said that, and I just sort of watched him just sort of lay a couple of, as he called them, Brahms chords or Mozart, he said, oh, that's what you're doing. Like he just sort of brought sort of
it's the beauty of piano too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got 10 notes going if you feel such.
Yeah.
So the flavors of the chords you can add in, and he's a master of it, obviously.
Yeah, well, a genius, obviously. And all those different like inversions and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a very sort of piano song.
It's funny. One thing I did want to add here that when you talked about playing Emily and stuff, I said maybe I'm throwing this as a surprise to Byron as well as everybody else, but I fully intend that along this line, some point, to set up a little unplugged thing for you. I'm pretty sure that people, if they're interested in what we're talking about, they might like to see some, stripped down versions of the songs, including myself. I'd like to see how we do it.
Yes, I think I just quickly.
I don't mean me. I mean
no.
you.
But I think there's in my so the next song I did was The Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey, which was like almost like way too many songs with way too many musicians on it. 3 kitchen sinks and everything to go on that album. It was just packed. And I remember at the end of it and sort of being stuck as to like, am I going to get a band to play this? And I remember sort of coming to some sort of like resolution, like what do I do with this album and stuff like that. So I ended up playing with just me and the guitar, and we went I went to Zeephod Bibelbrox. Yeah, I just did
a popular bar in Ottawa.
Yeah, I just did the opposite of my album, and I just did some acoustic versions of the songs. And I remember thinking back then how wonderful the songs were. That regardless of how many billions of instruments I put on each song, that if it's just melody and guitar, the songs still come out because they're so lyrically animated anyways, a lot of the songs and stuff like that.
Yes, and I agree with you that most people like to hear the album version of that song, please. Your albums, I think, there's no way you're going to recreate them 100%. So they are free and clear to be effed with a bit. Because, again, they're not in the Parthenon of everybody's growing up like the Beatles songs are. So I want to hear them like when I heard them when I was 8. Now Byronic stuff, and when we get to do this unplugged thing, anything goes. That was the beauty of the Byronic world. Anything goes.
Yeah. I've told you, I would rather, instead of doing something, I'd rather spend an hour and waste everybody's time and sort of like make a song up in an hour and try and record it. To me, it would be a lot more fun to do, but I guess that's for the future.
That's Serendipity. Track whatever the album. We've only got a couple more to go. We're going to take a little break, come back, and we're going to get into Lieb, another one of his German-infused doo-wop songs.
Crazy.
Another one. Okay, see you in a bit. Kick, smash, kick, crash, and fight. I'll put this little hat right here. This was just a little diversion here before we go into Lieb. We were not good at designing stuff back then. Byron had a cousin, right, Jock?
Yeah. Yeah.
who was probably the first guy who could do graphics of all of us. So he created a little hat for Byron, which was mass produced in the 10s. Did you get 50 or something?
Yeah.
But lovely colors, purple with the Bite Down Hard logo. There you go. Anyways, we'll put that down here and we'll move along. So, we only have 2 songs left. This one is called Mit Lieb. So why don't I just let you give us a little intro here?
Well, it seems to be this German obsession that seems to be going through this album. This, I guess it was an ex-girlfriend who was Germanic in her origins. But I guess that's what you write about when it's somebody. And it was easy for me to write sort of in that sort of genre. Easy trope, German. So, Mit Lieb. And for the longest time, she kept saying Mit Lieb, and she would refuse to translate for me what Mit Lieb meant.
It's my love, isn't it?
So it turns out.
So much, yeah.
But she wouldn't say it in English to me, so I don't know whether that in itself was...
It's a nice short.
It is, but if the recipient is unaware as to its meaning, it could mean a lot of things in German, I guess, as far as he was concerned. So,
well, I remember we used to always yell "Raus mit you," So I thought the mit had something to do with it. That's my extent of linguistic understanding. But you did mention before that back in the day, it was very cool and all right to make Nazi jokes, in the sense that you're laughing at Nazis and making fun of them, making TV shows.
Yeah, there was the whole sprockets, Kraftwerk thing, the German perfection. There was a big thing I remember in movies growing up, Ilse the She-Wolf. So that was sort of the shapeshifter with the Nazi sign and stuff like that. Was that pornography, Ilse the She-Wolf? Have you heard of Ilse the She-Wolf?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where in pop culture it fit in. I also remember that early game, what was it, Minecraft or something? You run down the little halls and you're always chasing after Nazis. That was a great thing for a long time. It was making real fun of the Nazis.
Yeah, it was like Return to Castle Wolfenstein. It was all
That's
that.
it. Wolfenstein.
Yeah,
yes.
Castle Wolfenstein. Yeah, it was all that sort of shtick and stuff like that. Yeah, shooting Germans was at the time was a good thing, especially when they wanted to take over your country. So I guess. So it was my play. There's a certain earnest. So I'm again. The lyrics are wonderful in one sort of respect, but there's a certain humor that I have in my life that I don't see. There's no vein of humor in these lyrics. There's a certain earnestness on them and stuff like that. I don't think I'd write lyrics. What I'm seeing now that I wrote 30 years ago, I'd no way write like that today and stuff like that. Like when I'm seeing the album and when I really get into these lyrics and stuff like that, I'm completely like, get over yourself, Byron. Seriously.
Well, it's funny because this song, and again, we're now rolling the lyrics along when you're hearing the song. This one does have a little crack into the Byronic.
Oh, it's terrible.
Paranoia, schizophrenia.
It's terrible. Like when I'm almost embarrassed to hear the lyrics to this song, like me sing it. Let me give you a lesson on the art of obsession. I mean, I'm surprised the police don't. Like, you were to send those lyrics off to the police, they'd be at my door right now and stuff like that. Yeah, it's not a good thing. And it's sort of a trope. It's sort of one of those. It's based on sort of a doo-wop type of song. I think I wrote it on keyboards. It's got some major sevenths in it, so it's got those little smoky chords in it and stuff like that. So it's a very sort of basic musical trope that somehow I wanted to establish my musicality on my first album. I can definitely hear that and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll play it. I'm embarrassed to hear it, but you might as well go for it.
One thing I'm going to mention ahead of time, only because once again we find ourselves at a Byronic ending. It's going to take a 180 here at the end of this song.
Is it? I don't remember anything about it.
Look forward to this.
I was the crypt into the pyre, the zombie ritual of wants and desires. It's a woman who brought me into this world, and it's a woman who's gonna bury me. You don't know how many times I've wondered where you are every night. Who's kissing who? Who is touching you? Baby, I've been waiting, and my heart is disintegrating. Picking up the mess you left me in. Kill the lights, the party is dead. You had to go and spill the red, red wine. Don't laugh at me, 'cause I'll break down and cry. Sometimes I can't help it. I've been running, that there's nothing compares with you. Babe, tell me, what am I supposed to do? Let me give you a lesson on the art of obsession. What am I after? You can spell it disaster. So what are you doing? Is it so hard to be human? Oh, get me straight. This is for real. Get a heart. How many times must I stand here and dream of you? Knowing nothing compares with you. Baby, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Let me give you a lesson on the art of obsession. What am I after? You can spell it disaster. So what am I doing? First you have to act human. Lord, get me straight. This is for real. Get a heart.
I like the ending.
Told you.
Who's the what's
Well,
the
there
throat
was a,
singers?
there was a pair of
Throat singers.
Inuit
Yeah,
throat
okay.
singers
Yeah,
from
yeah.
John's studio.
Right.
He had that, and it was a reappearance of my friend Blop Blop. That
Okay.
was the Lebanese artist that stiffed me for a few thousand
Right,
bucks.
yeah,
So we
yeah.
felt at ease to take his stuff, rip it up, put it backwards, and that was one ginormous Byronic ending. But prior to the ending, give us a feedback.
Well, I hear it. I'm slightly embarrassed as to the. I think there's a few criminal code violations in this in the lyrics of this song, potentially stalking and all that stuff.
But in reality, it
well-
is what everybody thinks at some point in their life. So
Sure. I hear a lot of stuff. Again, it's sort of the same sort of trope. I hear a beautiful sort of little melody underneath it, and a nice. To me, my first thought listening to this is this would sound, especially with the lyrics, it'd be fun to do it on a ukulele and just have that trope against that little chukka chukka with sort of singing about some sort of very sort of demonic stalkings type of song. That being said, very kind of like the chorus isn't as bad as I thought. Sort of that movement up, but your guitar solo, I think, is for sure the highlight of this song, and it sounds wonderful how you play the melody on your guitar. And it really brings it's just like the song to me. Listening to it really blossoms. It sounds wonderful, and I have memories of us. I was sitting right across. You had the guitar, and now were there any pedals being used? Because it's not unlike us that I'm sort of on the pedal doing
doesn't
something.
sound like any pedals. I was saying I like the tone there. I wouldn't even be able to venture a guess at what amp we were using. It might have been John Cody's Marshall. It may. I had a JC 120 that I had a DS1 pedal that went through, and somehow it sounded really nice in the studio.
Yeah, it's a standout guitar solo. It sounds like $1,000,000, and I always remember part of the guitar solo where there was the one note, and I think you always wanted to sort of you were sort of coming. It was sort of the first half of the guitar solo, and you're coming down to this note at the end of a bar. And you always wanted to play sort of the root note, and I remember the chord was a major 7th, and I was trying to get you to play the 7th, and as soon as you would play the 7th, like it just sort of it really opened up the chord and stuff like that. But your ears were saying go to the root, and I remember a few times
Because that's your natural.
right. And I kept pointing to you. I
that.
said, "Okay, go to that other note."
Right.
And as soon as you would do it, you can really hear it, like when you sort of drop down to this finally the solo note. That's what I remember us sort of figuring out. But I think once you sort of got that note, you just sort of took off with the rest of it, and it was very little.
Yeah, I left the melody as we go along, but I was saying if you listen to the background vocals, it's so beautiful the way that background's built up. And I also say that yes, in your choruses, like at the end of them, when you're really belting, there was again some really nice notes there. You go, I can hear a younger Byron doing that. You know, there was so much good, and I can't hear this song just because of it. You really shoved it in that doo-wop style that I can't hear it done any other way.
Yeah.
But I loved it for that. Like, I think like you, I'm ADD with music. I want to hear a barbershop quartet, and then I want to hear a death metal song, and then I want to hear a folk song, and you know.
Yeah, so we play those two songs back to back. I think on their own, just the two songs that we play. So each song in their own is, especially the first one, so lovely. But again, you sort of playing back to back, it just becomes a bit too much. However, I'm just listening to the melody to this song and stuff like that. Very sort of traditional. However, it's beautiful. I'm sure if I just sort of played it on piano, it just sort of dee 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 dee. You can hear the sort of the harpsichord and stuff like that.
For sure. It really sounds like a classical part.
Yeah.
That contrapuntal kind of.
Yeah. So I listened to these two songs and I think, it's too bad that, well, not too bad, but I mean, like, they would have been fine to go out and do. I always said, for me, as I said, if I'm going to go do live stuff, this is why I always said it's all. If I had my druthers, I'd be a 3-piece band and going to each city with playing with an orchestra. Absolutely. So I can hear this song.
A variety of instrumentalists that could just read the charts and interpret stuff as they could be neat to have a hurdy-gurdy in Indian orchestra
so
one night. Next night you've got a
I always
quartet.
I always remembered seeing Bjork doing a live show from Europe. And she sort of had the same idea. She had these things orchestrated out, sort of charts, but she, instead of having the traditional orchestral instruments, she had the hurdy-gurdies and the sort of weird bow things and stuff like that. So so you just got, so again, you're dealing with vocals, and then you're dealing with sort of the backing tracks and how sort of crazy you want that sort of mishmash. But yeah, I'm very much in that mode. I love to switch around and stuff like that. And just listening to that song, of my time, like when I did, it would be fun to sing live because there's a lot of sort of shouting at the end. So I always think, it's fun to, when you're in an audience, sort of grooving at the end or whatever, like that, shouting and stuff like that. So yeah, I think there was those sort of things always in mind. But it wasn't as bad as it's still embarrassing to listen to some of the lyrics, stuff like that. When I think.
On a final note, give us when you hear the lyrics back, what do you think was going on that would inspire this?
Just probably the in the middle or the end of a relationship. I mean, I think just coming to terms with myself and my sense of place in this universe and stuff like that. I think so. I wrote that, or a lot of the lyrics. How old was I? 30 or something like that. 31 when we were doing this album and stuff like that. So I just sort of gone through at least one serious relationship, or in my world, one sort of serious relationship. So as I told you when I first started out, I really had nothing to write about. I was making up lyrics as I went along. So I think I really indulged in the fact that I just sort of was in the middle or been through something, and just used that as just sort of a starting to figure out. We talk about sort of figuring out life, and like what makes you happy and stuff like that. So I think it was my first stab at trying to come to terms with who I was and who I am and stuff like that. Very sort of indulgent, though. There's a lot of indulgence in this album, I think, personally, stuff like that. And again,
what album doesn't have that?
Sure, but I think now when I write, I always like to. I definitely like to have a sort of a trigger of humor through it. And I don't see a lot of humor. I see a lot of lyrical content, but a lot more serious in nature and stuff like that. That's sort of, I guess, what surprises me most about listening to this 30 years later. I don't ever remember thinking about that, or thinking, oh, that was my serious album and stuff like that. Because I know my next album that I did was a lot more freakier and was just like a freak show, a lot more funner and stuff like that. Maybe I had to get, but of course, like I don't deny anything. It's important that I learned like so much doing this album. Like I could not be where I am today without this album. I mean, life is a learning experience. Still learning today, trying to figure out like what a good song is and stuff like that. Still, same problems 30 years ago, same problems today.
And it's funny because like a lot of other artists, as they go along in their career, and you talk to people who are fans, they'll always say, oh, these early albums, oh man, they were the things, they were the ones you want to listen to. And, John Dewar, we quite often speak of John because he was a big figure in all of this stuff. He always said he loves that first album. Personally, I love The Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey. I just think that's the high water mark as far as execution, composition, just everything. It was so. We'll hear it in time, and you can listen to it online when I get that up. But we take different things out of different albums, and it's just interesting to look at your output against another artist's output. And how I might think the same thing about other artists where, earlier albums are better. Once you get into Koi Paradiso and the current album that will be released, people will hear this progression of where you've gone to that isn't so far off the first thing. It's just the tools we have to use now makes it much more sophisticated. And, music producers today will understand the sounds you can get. The tools you have to use are vastly improved. And at the end of the day, the material's no better.
Absolutely, and I agree with a lot of that. The only thing I would say, I would have a bit of a thing, and it doesn't take away what you said, but The Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey is a high watermark. I think I haven't hit it yet. I know as an artist there's so much more I want to do, and I know I haven't hit. In my own head, I haven't hit that high watermark. perhaps.
I didn't think of how that sounded. I didn't mean so much like that.
No, but I totally get you on that. But this is part of the drive. This is part of the drive.
Enormity of
Yeah,
what
yeah.
it was.
But this is always part of the drive about trying to get to a good song. Like I always think I get close, but I always want to go to the next one because I think I've learned something on my last one, and I think I'm getting closer and closer. And in a way, I do think I'm getting closer, but I don't think I've hit it yet. And I know there's a ton of stuff left in me. Like I just feel it in my bones and stuff like that. Like you just today, this week we had a thing where Steve found a track that might be like 5 years old of mine laying around. It was a backing track. And he found it, and he's playing it. Well, it's on the website, isn't it? It's the.
Oh yeah, I've been using it as the opening and closing now for the
Yeah.
Byronic Compendium, and I've been using it in a lot of stuff because I can put it in the background and it works in all situations.
So the weird thing, like, you know, I do this stuff every day. So at some point, I've the song that you discovered, I had put away at some point and gone on to like another song and stuff like that. Obviously, I put it away for some reasons I can't remember, but you brought it up 5 years later. I'm listening to it, and I'm just freaked at how cool it sounds. I don't hear any mistakes. I don't hear the reason why I stopped doing it. I'm almost incredulous to myself that I didn't recognize how cool it was.
Well, it's weird because unlike scales, you know, when you play in modes, it's kind of a modal song in that it doesn't. It does a lot of different things, but it never really veers much from the original,
Yeah.
you know, 4 or 8 bar, whatever that piece is.
Oh, it's wonderful, and I'm hearing chord changes that I can't remember doing. I know it's me, absolutely, it's all me. But I'm listening to these chord changes, and I think, holy jeez, like how stupid was I to put that song away? But there's tons of that stuff, like laying around. Like, it surprises me, but it doesn't surprise me. I'm constantly thinking I can do better on the next thing and stuff like that. So as far as those high water, and they're not much farther from maybe this like original album. But in my own head, I think I definitely think I'm getting closer to where I don't think I'll ever get there. But I think
Well, it's interesting in the analogy of sports and music. You know, we both play a lot of sports and play a lot of music. You always have this, you know, playing hockey, next shift, I know what I should be doing. I'm gonna be perfect, you know, like I may not score a goal, but I'm gonna play my position perfectly. In music, like, oh, you know, this gig, I mean, tomorrow, I'm not sure if we're supposed to ever get it right. You know, like I ask songwriters and producers, because I'm not I'm not Byron. I don't write songs. I'm a great sideman, but I'll never write the songs. And I always ask songwriters, if you ever make a song you consider perfect, you're going to put everything down and go, now I'm going to do horticulture. I want to do flowers. Like, is there a spot where you go, that's it, it's perfect?
I think you get as close as I think I've learned along the way. It was very hard for me to I've taken an enormous amount of time to make my albums. I think the first album that we did, what did we take, 2 years to do and stuff like that? 2 years. My second album, which was almost 2 albums worth, it took me like 5 years to do and stuff like that. Like learning when to say I'm finished on a song has probably been like one of the biggest problems I've ever sort of encountered. I think I'm getting a lot better at it now, but I think I also recognize that I will never get it perfect, and I don't think I ever want to get it perfect. I'm getting closer to perfect, but I definitely know when now to sort of move on to my next song. I think I'm getting better at it, I'll put it that way. I still probably spend too much time on my stuff, but still, so I'm doing this like 30, 40 years later. You bring that song to me this week. I never heard it before, but I remember it. I remember it. So you gave me a copy last week. I take it home. I put it on the speakers, and all of a sudden I'm just listening to it, and I'm freaking out at how cool it sounds. And making me want to dance. And
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to drop it in right here.
And I got so excited by it. Like, there were a couple of nights I couldn't get to sleep, and I was so happy to wake up in the morning thinking I had this, like, this song was dropped in my lap. And I'd sort of done all the recording. It was me and Susie was a girl I'd worked with in the studio previous. And some great... so within 2 days, I was sitting with it, playing it again, and the lyrics just came falling out of me. And again, like, you know, like, where does this stuff come from?
See, that's what I was saying earlier.
It was just ridiculous. I was so excited by it, and the lyrics. And and it was important for me because we talked about the word serendipity. This song just sort of appeared out of this beautiful thing, sort of appeared out of nowhere last week. The fact that you found it, and so it was almost like the muse or the fates of creativity saying, "He's given you this song, do something with it." And so,
That's
like,
too bad. I'll have to stop using it as a backing track.
so I ended up, yeah. So it's been just a completely exciting week for me to have this new thing just sort of put in my lap. The lyrics come out. Yesterday I sang, I looped it twice and I sang it. I thought I almost got the vocal, and I wasn't quite sure like what the melody was going to be. Today I'll go back and like listen to what I did. Hopefully I got most of it, but it's such a beautiful thing. And yeah, I'm as excited as I was probably when I was doing this album this week, just having that thing sort of, I'm always excited about stuff, but this was just sort of I'm constantly got this furnace of a nuclear reaction in me that it just always burns bright. So I've been very lucky like that.
Well, that was awesome, and that was Mit Lieb. That was officially the last song of the album.
My Love.
This leaves us at the point where we have one song left, which is the epic of the album. Is the best song. For me, it's the journey of the song that is great, and we'll have to speak of it next time.
Absolutely. So that was fun.
That was a lot of fun, and it's amazing we're almost at the end of this album with so much to look forward to. And we'll be bringing some guests on in the future, because as we go forward, more and more people are sort of getting involved instead of just the hermits. Matter of fact, I exit the story for a while for the next few years. So what we'll do is we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.